I'd like to give a very special and very warm welcome to our next speaker, Victoria Nolan. And I'd also like to thank L'Occitane for being our national workshop sponsor. Victoria Nolan is a world champion rower, a Paralympian, special education teacher, and I know probably what she prides herself most on, being a mom. Victoria turned to sport to overcome the anxiety and the hopelessness she felt with loss of vision. And this decision changed her life dramatically forever. She has a new outlook on vision loss and how it can actually be an opportunity to see things differently and to look at things differently and to feel differently. Victoria is a great friend of the foundation, and she has supported and participated in our Cycle for Sight event for many years. She has also spoken at a number of our events and is a strong advocate for our mission to find cures and treatments for vision loss. I woke up one morning a few months ago, or several months ago, I guess now, and I heard Victoria on CBC Radio being interviewed in the morning. And in addition to all of her other talents, she's also a writer and an author. And she's written this book called Beyond Vision, which is a beautiful book. And I think it challenges us all. The thing about this book, I read it through, and I think what permeated the book, in addition to Victoria's courageous and actually her determination, that's what really struck me. She was so darn determined to beat back against the odds and become a Paralympic rower. But also what infused the whole book is the love of her husband, Eamon, and the love of her two children. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Victoria Nolan, who's here today with Alan.
I'm here wearing my Cycle for Sight jersey, so I'm going to give a little plug to Cycle for Sight. If you want to join my team, we're the fast and the furious. You don't have to be fast, it helps if you're furious. I've learned a lot of things from being on the national team, not only about sports, but about life as well. And one of the messages that I took with me is how powerful having a positive attitude is. We learned that one day when a sports psychologist came in, and he got one of the athletes to stand up, and the athlete had to hold his arms out straight in front of him. And the sports psychologist told him, you have to hold your arms out strong and don't let me push them down. But while you're holding them there, I want you to think of negative things, think of some sad things. And it was fairly easy for him to push the athlete's arms back down to his sides. Then they tried the experiment again, and this time he was to think of happy, empowering things. And it was a lot tougher for him to get those arms down. And this is true in life as well. You need to have a positive energy about you if you want to be successful. Being positive will give you inner strength, and it will draw people to you. Being negative is going to weaken you and push people away. So I'd like to share with you my 3 tips on how to keep a positive attitude while living with vision loss. And my tips are to have a sense of humor, to keep moving forward, and to see challenges as opportunities. Laughter is important for your health. I realized how important it is the very first time I came to a Vision Quest conference and heard some of the stories, the humorous stories of what can happen to you when you're living with vision loss. And it felt so good to laugh about those things and to share the laughs with people who really understood it. So can I hear a round of applause for anyone who has walked into the wrong bathroom? How many of you have been caught talking to an inanimate object? And my favorite now with this new technology, I like to dictate messages into my phone. How many people have had some really embarrassing message come out because it misunderstood you? I was writing to Dave Wilsey. He's the captain of the men's wheelchair rugby team. And I had met him once before, but I was writing to him to invite him to an event. So I started the email with, "Hey, Dave," and went on with my invitation. When I sent it and had the phone read it back to me, I had actually said, "Hey, babe." Two of my favorite moments, I don't think anyone else has probably had these moments, so I'm going to share them with you. One is about my favorite pair of boots, and so I got them in two colors. I have a black pair and a red pair, and I went to work with one of each color on my feet. Fortunately, I'm a teacher, so I told the kids I was just testing them and trying to see if they were paying attention. But this is the absolute worst. I didn't tell anyone about this. It's been a year, and you guys are the first people that I'm sharing this story with. I was getting the kids ready for school. I was making their lunches. They're 9 and 11 now. So I was packing their lunch, and they love these little goldfish snacks. So they now make them in chocolate flavors, so they're like little tiny brown cookies. So I packed them up in their lunch, and then I packed myself some as well. So I put it into a Ziploc bag, packed up, and went off to school. I brought Alan into my office, and at recess, and I was hungry, pulled out the snack, grabbed a handful of the goldfish, popped them into my mouth, and crunched down and realized something is wrong. This is way too crunchy. And as the horrible taste filled my mouth, I realized I had just eaten Alan's kibble. So there's another good lesson for you. Don't put your dog's kibble in a Ziploc bag. So yeah, having a sense of humor helps. My second tip, this one is more serious. This is about moving forward. You have to keep moving forward. This is the hard part, and I think sometimes people think it's easy for me to say keep moving forward because things have worked out for me. But they haven't always. I did go through really rough times, and I don't like to talk about those times in great detail or think about them too much. There were times when I felt hopeless and felt like I had no future. But I've overcome that now, and I've learned how to keep moving forward. There's a quote that I love that I carry around with me. It's really important to my life. It means a lot to me. It was said by a very wise man, and his name is Rocky Balboa. He said that life is not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep getting up. How much you can take and keep moving forward. And so that's what I think about in my life. Every time that I get up, every time that I come back from some challenge, it's making me a stronger person. If you were here for the Braille conference, you've already heard this analogy, but a couple of weeks ago, I ran the Scotiabank half marathon. And I had a partner that I'd been training with, and we got about 6 kilometers into the run, and I tripped. And I took the skin off my knees and my elbow. But I got up and I kept running. I finished the half marathon, and when I was done, that's really when the pain started. You know, like sometimes when you're into athletic activity, you don't feel the pain until it's all done. So the pain set in then, and I really couldn't bend my knees for about 4 days after that race because of the cuts and bruises. But on day 5, I was back out running again. And those cuts and bruises are gone now. But if I had stayed at home and been too afraid to take on that half marathon and been depressed and been unhealthy, those effects would go way longer than a little cut and bruise. So that's just an example of how you know, it's hard, but you just got to pick yourself up and keep going. So how do you do that? How do you keep moving forward? Well, one of the things that I've said, if you've heard me speak before, is that you have to look at things differently, which is so funny to say to people who can't see. But it's something that my husband taught me a long time ago, and it took me years to listen to him, but now I get it. You know, you might have a plan for how you think your life is going to go, but things change, and you have to change with that, and you have to be able to see a positive side to things. And I think if you look hard enough, there really is always a positive side. Way back when I was younger, my goal was to become a teacher. It was something I was always passionate about. And when I realized that that wasn't going to unfold the way I had hoped, my husband convinced me to look for something else to be passionate about, and that turned out to be rowing. And we know that turned out to be amazing. I've traveled all around the world and won a gold medal for Canada. It really doesn't get better than that. So that philosophy, I think sometimes people think, again, like, oh, it's so easy for you to say that. And it was really a challenge for me a couple of years ago when a good friend of mine got breast cancer, and she was only 23. And so she went through chemotherapy, and she had a mastectomy. And I remember saying to her during the chemotherapy, one day you're going to look back at this and realize that it happened for a reason. I really believe that there will be something that will come out of this. And even as I said it, I felt horrible, because how could anything possibly be considered good coming out of this? And I really started to doubt that. But she had been accepted to medical school just before getting diagnosed with the cancer, and so she had to defer that. Once she recovered, she decided she wasn't going to go to that university after all. She wanted to stay close to home, and so she went to McMaster University. And that's where she met her husband, and they now have a 1-year-old son. So it's a stretch, I know, but if you can somehow, if you can look at that and think, okay, that had to happen so that I met my husband, and I think that just gives you a sense of control in your life, and a more positive outlook. And, it's really easy to just look at that in a negative way, but you've got to search for those positives. On a simpler level, there's the everyday things that happen. My vision has been changing a lot recently, and just a couple of weeks ago, I had a week where I seriously injured myself 3 times in 1 week, and it was all in the face. So it was really hard for me to deal with, and yes, I was depressed, and I cried a lot, and I ate a lot of chocolate. But afterwards, then it's like, okay, time to pick myself up, and how can I learn from this? How can I move forward? And I realized that I'm now at the point where I need to ask for more help at home. And I hate that. I'm fiercely independent. I don't like giving it up at all. But I guess I needed some sense knocked into me. And so I'm asking for more help, and it's relieved stress, and things are a lot better. Well, a bit better, I guess. But you've got to find those positives. And if you don't see them immediately, you can create them. My last competition was in the London Games, and we had been doing really well. We had won the World Championships, and we went in there expecting to get a medal, and we finished 7th place. It was devastating, and you might think, well, you were lucky to go, but as an athlete, that was really hard to come in 7th after putting in years and years of hard work. And I suffered from depression after that, but now I have taken on tandem cycling, and I look at that as I think that needed to happen to push me into a sport that is a little more about me pushing myself and not so much a team sport. And so maybe I'm going to achieve greatness in tandem cycling, and I had to lose in London to push me to that. So I really do think you need to just figure out ways to keep being positive. Take that time to be upset, of course, but then pick yourself up and move on. And my final tip is to see challenges as opportunities. I love sending this message to kids when I talk in high schools and elementary schools. I think if you have challenges to overcome, you're lucky. You have an opportunity to develop your inner strength. People who sail through life and who don't have that many challenges, if life is easy for them, they have pretty ordinary lives. If you look at people who are successful, they've all had to overcome things. And so us living with vision loss, we have things to overcome every single day. When people ask me, how did you become so successful as an athlete in such a short time? I made the national team within a year of learning how to row. And so some people will say that was natural talent. Some people say it was training. But I honestly believe that it was grit. And grit is that characteristic where you learn how to persevere towards long-term goals. You learn determination. You learn how to keep getting up. And as I said, we all have that every day. Every day we're faced with challenges and we have to move forward. So we actually have the opportunity to do amazing things, because if you keep taking on those challenges, it's amazing what else you can take on. Push yourself to take on something that's a little bit harder. Keep on taking those steps forward. And like I said, before you know it, the things that you can do are amazing. How can I get into a boat and row against the best rowers in the country? Well, I used to stand at my front door terrified to step outside. I would have trouble breathing, my heart would be pounding, and I would force myself to take those steps. I can get in a boat and push past fatigue, no problem. How can I get on a plane and travel to Beijing? I've tackled the subway during rush hour. I can handle a plane to Beijing. And how can I get up in front of hundreds of people and talk? Well, this is something that I can do. It's something that I don't feel there are any barriers towards. And so I'm going to keep doing it because it's something I can do. It's something I can get better at. And so I enjoy doing it. Obviously, I'm not saying that living with vision loss is easy. It can be terrifying. It can be lonely. It can taste like dog food. But it is manageable, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. Keep being positive, keep getting stronger, and keep getting up.